Welcome to another installment of Advancing the Common Good with United Way of the Lewis and Clark area. I'm Dina Freedy, and I'm the Director of Development and Marketing for United Way here in Helena, Montana. And this time of year is really interesting. We're after the holidays. We're all starting to try and do more skiing and snowboarding and snowshoeing, but there are a lot of people in our community who may not have that luxury and who are struggling just to meet their basic needs, especially with housing. So today we are joined by two very, very special guests. We have Corbin Bursama from Good Samaritan Ministries and Michael O'Neill from Helena Housing Authority. Thanks for coming, guys.
Good to be here, Dana. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you tell us just a little bit about some of the work being done at Good Samaritan Ministries and Helena Housing Authority to address housing and housing insecurity here in the greater Helena area?
Well, the Helena Housing Authority has served the Helena community for over 80 years now in terms of addressing the housing needs, particularly of those with the lowest incomes and most vulnerable in our community. So that includes working families struggling to get by with limited low-wage jobs, the elderly, and people with disabilities living on fixed wages, on fixed incomes. We're currently serve about 1,850 folks at any one time in the community, and we do that through a variety of our own housing that we own, and where rents are set at a very affordable price, and through voucher programs where people can lease from private landlords in the community. In terms of, we're really interested, we have a number of homeless programs that target the needs of chronically homeless folks in our community, and we're very glad to be involved in partnerships with Good Samaritan and United Way on partnerships to better serve and address homelessness in our community.
Great. How about you, Corbin?
Good Samaritan provides a variety of services in our community, from basic needs like clothing and food, all the way up to things like critical auto repairs, help with utilities, and help with rent. So we've been doing that for about 35 years. We also, in reference to the housing programs that we have two different programs that are designed to help individuals and families reach housing stability. One of those programs is the Hunt Housing Fund, which is a loan and grant program that's intended for people that have income and have the ability to repay that loan part of the program. We also have another program called the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is designed to help move individuals and families from the streets into permanent stable housing, regardless of their income or the other barriers that they may have. So in addition to that, we are also a front door access point for a lot of the homeless services in our community. So Good Samaritan is one of the places that you could come to get some help if you were in a housing crisis.
That's really great. So there are 5 different front doors here in the community. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Can you name those off the top of your head?
I sure can. So that's Good Samaritan Ministries. We have Our Place Drop-In Center. We have the Volunteers of America. And we have Salvation Army is no longer a front door. They were for a time. And Pureview Healthcare. In both of its locations, the Healthcare for the Homeless location within God's Love, as well as their location on 9th Avenue. So those are the places where someone who is experiencing a housing crisis could go to access some of the homeless resources in our community.
Great. So both of your organizations have been very heavily involved as front doors for the coordinated entry system, which helps to provide referrals and more information for folks who are struggling with housing in our area. And you also have representatives at a weekly case conferencing meeting. Can you tell me just a little bit about what that experience of case conferencing is all about and what it means to your organizations and the people you serve?
Well, the Helena Housing Authority, we don't serve as a front door. We provide the fundamental resource of supportive housing resources that help link people to permanent housing. And so we operate currently. We have supportive housing programs that are targeted at the needs of homeless veterans and their families, as well as permanent supportive housing programs that target the needs of chronically homeless. And so we're at the table there to not only link to those programs, but also to make all the participants aware of all our other programs, our mainstream resources like public housing, our tax credit properties, or our housing choice voucher Section 8 programs, to make sure that people get signed up waiting lists and are linked to housing that they need.
How about you, Corbin?
I want to just kind of go into what the case conferencing model kind of looks like for people that may not understand. Sure. So all of those places that I named previously, the front door access points, are where kind of the intake process is done. We all have a coordinated intake process, and we try to do it in the same way across all of those organizations and all those access points. So each week, the information that's collected at those intake locations is staffed by a variety of partners. So each week on Wednesday, we meet at the United Way. There's a pretty large group, usually between 10 and 15 people each week, made up of primarily housing providers, case managers, mental health providers, folks with the county in the jail, et cetera, just kind of all the people that work heavily with housing and homelessness. So each week, the information collected at the access points is staffed at that weekly meeting, and decisions are made on how to connect people most effectively with resources. We have internal priorities created, and the goal is to address the most vulnerable people in our community. So the people that need it most and don't have any other options. Those are the people that we want to help first, because resources are short, and so when they're short, it's important to make sure we get them to the people who need them most.
Sure.
You know, I think that really highlights one of the important differences of the coordinated entry process. It's changing us to focus on prioritizing those with the greatest needs first, rather than first come, first serve kind of model that previously was there. The other critical part that coordinated entry does is that it begins to build, a strong data on the people that we're trying to serve, what their needs are, and we get a better understanding of not only individual needs, but then the collective needs of people and families in our community who are homeless or unstably housed, and so that we can develop better responses to those needs. I've been involved in homeless work here in this community for nearly 25 years, and I think this is one of the most important things we've done. I think case conferencing combines both the individual ability for sitting around the table with the case conferencing is you can tell the individual stories, because lots of the folks around the table will have personal information that they can share about the person that's talking about. But the data that's collected through the coordinated entry data collection also is really capturing, helps us stay focused on, what are the actual factual basis of the needs that we're looking at. And so combined, I think you get a better outcome. And the overall process just encourages organizations working together, because I think we all do a better job when we're working together on these issues. It's when we're fragmented and separate silos that we don't work as well.
Right, and like you said, I think it's very interesting because all the different organizations that are coming to the table offer related but different services. So to be able to come together and actually provide a better understanding, not just to each other, but also to these people who are being served is critically important. And also, when we're talking about those specific details and specific cases, everything discussed around that table is kept confidential within the confines of that space, because we want to make sure that we're providing that privacy and that confidentiality to folks especially those who are in crisis. So that's really important. Now through this process, which coordinated entry started, or case conferencing and coordinated entry really, they started about a year and a half ago in our community. And through those efforts, they have housed close to 200 people in our community, which is, it doesn't sound like a very high number, but considering the lack of housing available, especially affordable housing, like we were talking about earlier, what kind of impact does that actually have on the community? What does that mean?
Well, I would just say that it's important to understand that when we're talking about housing 200 people, it's about linking them to permanent housing situations. It's not about providing a shelter for an evening. It's about making that link to permanent housing. And they do it in a variety of ways, and Good Samaritan plays an important role in that Corbin can talk about the rapid rehousing and the diversion that often goes on, where with very little resources people can get set up and on their way to being self-sufficient. And then through the coordinated entry process that we're identifying those folks who really have really high needs, frequently with co-occurring disabilities, usually serious disabling mental illness, sometimes substance abuse combined with that. And those are a little harder to serve, and that's where resources, more intensive resources like permanent supportive housing can be utilized.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what this effort has done to impact our clients is I feel as if people are able to be housed in a more timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that's happened is through this process, it's been incredibly gratifying to see some people with some great barriers get housed, but it's also been kind of hard when we can't find a resource for a family or an individual because, as I mentioned earlier, they are limited. We have a great ability to respond, but we still do need to build some more capacity. So the thing that's been really great about that is as the needs and gaps are identified, which happened pretty quickly when we all came to the table and we were all kind of on the same page together, we realized that there were some gaps and some needs and some things that weren't working well. And we've been able to respond together to make those less of a barrier, because if the barrier's with the program, then there's an issue there. We should work to lower that barrier and increase access to services. And we've been able to do that by Helena Housing, for example, has lowered the deposit for some of their programs. They've looked at some of their onboarding and intake processes and tried to make those more accessible. And so that's happened kind of community-wide and system-wide. When we identify a gap or a need, we're kind of able to respond on that level pretty quickly to make it this process and our community a better place.
That's great. So if folks who are watching this want to learn more or even figure out how they can support this collaborative effort where we're really trying to reduce those barriers and get people into permanent supportive housing, what can they do to get involved and how can they support this effort?
Well, I think encouraging organizations in the community to fully participate in this process, all the organizations that help serve the homeless, the more we work together, the more effective we can be. And so we're still building the coordinated entry process and the related data collection and coordinating work that's part of that, and that's important. I think individuals can support the agencies in our community that do work with the homeless and provide them financial support and volunteer time to get that done. And then I think it's really important on a policy level that we support policies and things like developing more affordable housing in the community, particularly supportive housing that really addresses homelessness. That we're able to, pretty critical to this is frequently access to health care, things of a whole variety of kinds, chronic illnesses and disease and serious disabling mental illness, all requires access to health care that's provided through things like Medicaid. So the current Medicaid expansion has made a big difference. I think Montana is one of the only states that doesn't provide state general fund to address affordable housing needs, and I think we need to change that in the state, and we're working on ways that we can develop more resources so that we can expand available housing to the community.
Sure.
Yep.
Corbin, what do you think?
I would say one of the most important things that people could do would be to share this work with their family and friends. And second of all, to just take a look at some of the stigmas around homelessness, remembering that these people are our neighbors, people experiencing housing crisis, and it's not indicative of any kind of weakness or inferiority. A single flat tire, an unexpected health event. When you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're living in poverty, those kind of things can propel a person into homelessness. So I think just the basic caring about our neighbors and understanding that this is all kind of our issue together to work on. I think that's going to be one of the core things that people can do in general to help.
Absolutely. So if folks want to get more information about your work in the community, especially as it relates to housing security and homelessness, where can they go for more information?
Well, I would encourage people, particularly who are looking for housing resources, to go to our website at the Helena Housing Authority, which is hhamt.org, and there's information about how to apply for programs and get linked to housing. And I think that's pretty important. I think the United Way website is a great resource, and then Good Samaritan is such a broad, diverse resource in so many ways to serving the needs of the vulnerable in our communities. That's always one of the first places that we encourage people to, if they're not aware of Good Samaritan, go there.
Now, Corbin, what's your website for Good Samaritan Ministries?
So our physical address is 3067 North Montana Avenue, and you can come there anytime to learn more about what we do or to access our housing resources. Our website is www.goodsamhelena.org, and there's lots of information about this project as well as the other work that we do. So you can always go there. And just to wrap up, our telephone number is 406-442-0780. So those are all the different ways you can get in touch with us.
Great.
Good.
Well, thank you both so much for coming today and sharing more about your work for housing and all of the diverse wraparound services that Good Samaritan provides. Without you, I mean, there are a lot of people in our community who would be just in really terrible positions. So thank you so much for all the hard work that you do in our community.
All right, thank you, Dana.
Thanks for having us.
So if you would like to get more information about collective work to go ahead and address housing and housing security here in the Helena area, please visit unitedwaylca.org, visit Helena Housing Authority at hhamt.org, or check out Good Samaritan at goodsamhelena.org today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.